Okay, hi. So this is the speech video, and the speech unit is devised in 8 separate categories. There's dramatic interpretation, humorous interpretation, duo interpretation, oral interpretation, original oratory, declamation, impromptu, and extemporaneous speaking. Now, each category is extremely unique from one another, so it takes a lot in order to be able to fully master these events. And so this is the purpose of this video, so that way you guys have a better understanding of what each event consists of and like little pointers for each event. So every single event in the speech unit is a memorized piece, except for oral interpretation. You have a binder to refer to, but if you say for any event, you bring up a note card with like little parts of your piece on there, you aren't disqualified, but you won't be able to rank highly. You'll be probably on the bottom since everyone else was able to memorize their piece. It's best to just go up with whatever you have memorized and just hope that you can get by. So basically, some things you should know about all speech events is that popping and blocking are essential to almost all events. What blocking is that in your pieces, you aren't allowed to use props. And props can be like any physical thing. It can also be hair. Like if you want to twirl your hair and you have long hair, you have to use imaginary hair because someone else may not have long hair to use, like myself. Could be tears if you have a dramatic piece and you need to start crying. If you cry on demand, it's considered a prop because some other people just can't cry on demand like you may be able to. Anything in the room around you can be considered a prop if you refer to a point of the room. That's not allowed because if someone else needs to use something in the room, they can't because it may not be available to them. You want to be able to, when you're doing blocking, you typically want to mimic whatever you're trying to represent. So like, let's say you're grabbing a cup. You go and you put your arm around it and you bring it up. And it kind of looks like you're grabbing a cup. You want to make sure that it's extremely clear what you're trying to imitate. Because if you're just making random gestures and grabbing random things and not really clearly stating what you're doing, then people are going to be really confused and they're not going to know what's going on. For popping, what this is that a character pops in and out of your piece. In the interp events, there are usually multiple characters, and you want to be able to clearly represent who everyone is. So if you have for every single character a monotone voice and the same stance, people aren't really going to know whose line it is. So you create a clearly distinct stance and a completely unique voice for each character to like have your audience be able to comprehend what your piece is really about. Examples would include, like, if in your piece you have an old grandma character, you would give her an old raspy voice, you would have her speak slowly, you would have her hunched over, maybe with like a cane holding her back, something dramatic to show age. And like you have a different character who's a little boy, and so you'd make him like really, really active and like hyper and swaying to like all around, and you make his voice sound babyish, and you might give him like a lisp or a speech impediment to kind of show that he's like not really able to talk clearly yet. So typically in some speech events, curse words are used because curse words are funny or they cause a lot of dramatic effect, but you don't want to use it to a point where it's extremely offensive or it just becomes annoying. If your entire piece just has you cursing a lot, I would cut the words, or you can change the words for less offensive words. Unless it's extremely pivotal to the line you're delivering, I wouldn't use a curse word. When you walk into your round, look at your judge and determine if they'll be okay with you cursing. Don't ask them straightforward, but if you have a judge who's like really conservative looking mom or dad or an elderly person, don't curse. But if you have like a young looking kid who seems pretty relaxed, I would be comfortable with cursing. So when you get your script, you should do a table read of it and see what its time is. And if the piece is too long, you are allowed to cut parts of it out. When it comes to cutting, you want to cut all the excess information and details that aren't pivotal to the essential storyline. If you have a really, really emotional part or a funny part that you think would move the audience, I would keep it in. But if there's just some random details and extra pieces of it, there really is no point in keeping it. You want to make sure that your time is down. Originally, the script that you get should be about 8 minutes when you're done with your cutting, so that way you can have enough time to put your intro in. Now, your introduction, it basically is a roadmap of what your piece is, and what it typically states is like the title and author of the piece. You want to put that at the end of your intro. The intro can start off with a fact, it could start off with a quote, a personal experience, something that's either extremely moving or extremely funny, and it's kind of like your hook, trying to get your audience really interested in your piece. Throughout your intro, you should say what your piece is about and what's going to be happening, and the essential theme, but don't give away too many details. Kind of just introduce your main character, what your piece is about. Your intro should go after a teaser, and a teaser is the beginning part of your script, typically like a minute or two, the first minute or two of your piece, and then you can get into an intro when the timing seems appropriate. A random rule that a lot of people don't really get is that you are not allowed to lie on the ground. In some inter pieces, it may call for you to like fall on the ground, but you aren't allowed to do that. You have to have your feet planted on the ground. You can make it seem like you're falling, or you can like crouch down and make it seem like you fell, but you aren't allowed to actually lie down flat on the ground. And with all the inter pieces and declamation, they should be published pieces. You should be able to find it online or in a book or somewhere, and it needs to be published. It could be published by an anonymous person, but it just needs to be out there. Humorous interpretation falls into the 7 to 10 minute memorized category. As the title says, it's a funny piece, and it usually has a lot of different characters, and that's where popping comes into play. The characters should be zany and weird, and they should all have their distinct personalities. You want to refrain from using a monologue HI, because it really doesn't get that comedic effect of having weird interactions with all your characters. You use blocking within the interp unit, and something that happens a lot with HIs is that they're funny just for the sake of being funny. They're really, you should have refrained from using pieces that have no point to it. In the end, you want to have something that the audience can take away from it, some type of moral that they learn, or that moment where they just really understand what your piece is about. It shouldn't just be a lot of jokes and funny antics. It should have an actual point to it. So dramatic interpretation also falls into the 7 to 10 minute memorized category. It should typically be serious, and it should make the audience feel. You want to have moments where everyone in the room just feels like the weight of what you're saying. It's typically a monologue. It should be one person going up there telling you a story. And some of the common themes that we see in DI are rape stories, abuse, mental illness, violence. It's typically a lot of the terrors of the world and all the really horrible stories that you wish would never happen to someone. And that usually causes such an emotional response that the judges will remember you. You don't want to be that type of person, though, who's having a complete freak out and is acting like it's the end of the world. You should be, it should be realistic, and it should be a realistic response to that type of situation, not just a bunch of hysterics and screaming the entire time, because it just takes away from the overall meaning of your piece. So duo interpretation is a partnered event. The most important aspect of this is making sure that you love your partner, because you're going to be spending 12 hours with them at Saturday tournaments, and if you aren't able to bond with them properly or rely on them, it's not going to work out. Because if you have one person who's extremely dedicated and wants to go to every tournament possible and get the most amount of points, and you have another person who just wants to go to the bare minimum so they can pass the class, it's not going to work out well, and there's going to be a lot of frustration and tensions throughout your friendship, and it's going to reflect in your piece. You want to have a partner who will practice with you and who will stick with you no matter what, and who you're not afraid to be weird with, and who you can actually rely on. It's basically either an HI or a DI, because duo can be humorous or serious. typically what I see is that funny pieces place higher because the serious ones just don't get as many laughs. And when you compare funny with dramatic, a lot of times it's easier to do funny. The same rules apply, except in duo, you are not allowed to make eye contact with your partner, and you are not allowed to touch your partner throughout the piece, unless it's in your intro, in which there's free reign. A pointer throughout this is that you want to dress the same as your partner. So oral interpretation is the exception to the memorized rule. Within OI, you have a little black binder like this. This is the event that I typically do. You have two selections. You have your prose and your poetry. Your prose is a story, and it's kind of like a DI or an HI. It could be funny, it could be serious. Usually in OI, the serious ones are more common. Oral interpretation is a more dramatic event overall. With your poetry, you have multiple poems throughout it, and it creates a theme, and that theme should be evident throughout your piece and should be stated within your intro. It's by various authors. You can find anything that you want. Typically, slam poetry and spoken word poetry work the best. You want to refrain from using poems that rhyme, because when you say it, it just sounds elementary. You can have separate themes from your poetry to your prose, so they don't have to be related in any way. With your little binder, you want to fill the inside with, typically what we use as a black construction paper with the text on top with sheet protectors. And you'll have some pages where there's only like one sentence, because page flipping is essential throughout your piece, because the entire event is supposed to mimic storytelling. So you want to not read off your binder, and you want to have most of it memorized, but you want to look down for that storytelling effect. With OI, you have to have a little square, and that's a square of movement. You aren't allowed to lift, to have both feet off the ground or to walk around. You have to have one foot firmly placed on the ground. So if you're doing popping, you want to make sure that like one foot can like move over, or both feet can like slide, but you can't move around. And you really want to make sure that you stay within your area and not pace, because then you're going to be ranked lowly. So declamation is a novice event. You are only allowed to do it your first year of debate. And declamation is a speech that has been given by someone else, and it needs to be a published piece as well. You want to avoid from using like really famous speeches that are really iconic, because you're never going to be able to live up to that speech. So things like I Have a Dream speech, it's one of those iconic speeches throughout history that you really don't want to put yourself up to that standard. Commencement speeches are really popular, and they're typically funny. Ellen gives great ones. You have so many comedians giving commencement speeches that it's really easy to do. And you want to avoid from mimicking the original author of the speech, because it's interpretation, this entire section, and you want to be able to make it your own. And if it's a guy giving a speech, you don't really have to make it like a guy. You can do it more feminine, you can do it more masculine, whatever works for you. But don't try to put yourself up to that standard and mimic it completely, and just try to make it your own and make it really powerful and really convey what that person was trying to say throughout their piece. So original oratory is written by yourself, and it tackles a problem in society. And common examples of that would be like racism, stereotyping, judgments, bullying, things that we see day to day and face huge problems within our society. And what you want to talk about within your piece, you have an introduction, which is usually something personal or a scenario, something like that. And then within that introduction, you create a roadmap of your piece, and it's going to explain where you're going and what you want your entire speech to be about. You want to have 2 reasons for the problem and how the problem shows itself in society, and then you want to have your solution at the end. And when you create your roadmap, you usually want to relate it to your intro. You want to make your intro amazing because you're going to be referring back to it your entire piece. So once you finish your roadmap, you move on into your main points, and your main points should be really, really substantial reasons, and you need to have data for it, you need to have statistics, and you need to have quotes by authors, any type of evidence you can find that can support your claim. Add it in there at right times. You want to make sure that you have personal stories mixed in there, and you want to have that one story that's just so moving that it really is like the climax of your piece. And with your solutions, you want to provide clear examples of how we can fix this and how simple it is to fix it. And you want to tell your audience basically that it's up to you. And I've given you these reasons now, like you need to do something with it. And you want to relate your conclusion back to your intro and basically just wrap everything up into your intro, because that intro is the most important part of your entire speech. When you move with your oratory, you want to move with purpose. We have something called like the oratory triangle, where you basically you start here with your introduction. Once you make a main point, you walk over here. And then once you make another main point, you walk over here. And you kind of walk back, and you keep going around in like a little triangle. But when you move, you don't want to just move around with for no reason. You want to move with points and with purpose to really emphasize what you're saying. So with impromptu, you do absolutely no preparation at all before the tournament. When you walk into your round, they'll give you a random topic. It could be autumn, it can be cinnamon, it can be just anything that a common person would know. You're not going to get something like, okay, talk about ISIS. It's not going to be that serious and that relative to society today. You're going to have 7 minutes total to prep and to speak. And so what you want to do is you want to split that time so that way you're doing a lot of speaking and you're using minimal prep time. You want to do maybe a minute to 2 of prep and then just start speaking. And when you speak, you just keep going. And you don't want to fidget around. You want to have you can make up data. You can make up little quotes here and there. It doesn't really matter as long as it sounds reasonable, because they're not going to source check you. You're not going to give a quote and they're going to be like, okay, let's look up this quote right now and see if it's real, and then expel you from the tournament because it's not. So you want to stay on topic, because a lot of times when you're just going off on a tangent, you're just going out there and you're not really making any sense, and then you're like, oh wait, what's my topic again? So you want to remind yourself again and again what your topic is and keep talking about it. You want to not just blank and then just sit down. If you blank, take a second and just calm down and continue going with whatever it is. You can give history of things. You can say how it's relevant in today's society, like with cinnamon. Talk about where it originated, then talk about its functions in foods and stuff like that, and then talk about the cinnamon challenge and how it was taking over the media, and just try to relate it to every single possible point you can. Extemporaneous speaking is for those of you who are really, really up to date on the news. What it's going to be is they're going to give you a question about something going on in the world right now, and you're going to have 30 minutes to prep for it, and then you have to give a 7-minute structured speech memorized on that question. And you have to make sure that you answer it and not just talk about the actual subject. So what you need to do is that it depends on the tournament you are. You may or may not be allowed to use Wi-Fi. I wouldn't count on you being able to use Wi-Fi. So if you ever read a story on the news, or you click on something and it seems like it may be able to go to a question, save it on your computer as a file, and then you'll be able to access it later without using the internet. You really, really want to prep on things that are current and that are going on. So things that may be going on now, any type of thing going on with ISIS, any terror attacks with them. You may get a question about presidential debates and who's ranking first in the polls. Anything that's going on in the world or that may pose a problem, you want to save files on that. It will change each round, and you're going to have to keep writing these speeches And depending on the tournament, they may give you a broad list of topics beforehand. They may not, so don't rely on that. So just keep prepping as much as possible. You don't have to save it onto your laptop. You can print it out, but you're going to be printing a lot of articles, so you may just want to, like, if you have a laptop available to you, just keep saving things on there and bring it with you into your rounds. When you get the question, you want to have enough statistics and enough data to back it up, because within your structured speech, it's going to call for a lot of sources. I think you need to use about like 6 sources. That's like your ideal target point. You want to be able to hit those, and within the speech itself, it's pretty basic. It's kind of just like an explanatory essay. You have like your introduction with your hook and everything, kind of clearly defining what the topic is and what's going on, and then you answer the question and you give like 3 main points as to why your opinion is correct and what's backing it up. It's a difficult event, but if you're up to date on news, then it's pretty much the event for you. For amazing examples of all of these events, go on YouTube and look up nationals and then whatever event you're interested in. That you will get years and years and years of grand champions and finalists, and you will see all the techniques I'm saying put into proper use, and you'll want to mimic them. You don't want to plagiarize from them, because that's horrible to do, and you will get like called out in a tournament for it, because a lot of people watch these videos. But yeah, any grand champion is an amazing example, and some of the ones like I personally love. I love the Harry Potter one for HI. I love Metamorphosis from Duo. All the oratories, Josh Gad is amazing. Just keep looking them up and you'll find great examples of all of them. And it doesn't have to be nationals. It can also be like state champions. Any example on YouTube is typically a really good example. But some of the rules apply to different states. So unless I said it in this video, and if you see something that's like, oh, someone's lying on the ground, and you're like, oh wait, that wasn't covered in the video, then know that like what I'm saying is applying towards Florida, and maybe someone else in a different state will have different rules. So that is this video, and I hope you all took something from it. You guys actually like learned something, and thank you for watching it, and good luck to all debaters out there. Characters you want to have. This is gonna be a video of why I kill my dogs because they're barking. Thanks. When you have to make a video and you don't know what extemp is, so you're just gonna talk about random things about what extemp is because you kind of understand. I need to go to sleep.